Now that Trace's ship is operational, Rafa has found our trio a new job, but given Rafa's track record, just how lawful is this job? Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Crossin Streams. As always, I am your host, the real Gino Reynolds, and today we continue our look at Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7, this time Episode 6, called Deal No Deal. We last left off, Ahsoka is still with Trace and Rafa, and she's helping Trace to work on her ship. We're assuming that Trace has helped her fix her speeder, but she seems to be sticking around a while. Rafa then comes to Trace saying she needs Trace's ship. That being said, Trace ended up not being her first choice, and we don't find out yet why that's the case. Trace thinks it's because Rafa doesn't think she's good enough. But we learn later why Rafa would rather not have Trace there, and it's actually a good reason. It's a reason that shows that Rafa cares for her sister. Well, when they take off, they end up in a military flight lane, and we kind of figure out that Trace really doesn't know anything about how flying in this area in the upper parts of Coruscant work yet. Remember, she's lived down in the underground of Coruscant like her whole life, so she doesn't really know how this works. So they end up in a military flight lane, and the military does call them out on it, and they are about to go and arrest them, but in the room is Anakin Skywalker, and though they don't expressly say it, you can tell that he senses Ahsoka on the ship, so he just says, you know what, it's nothing, the ship was just in the wrong lane, let him pass. So then Rafa, after they go into space, tells Trace where they're going, but she keeps Ahsoka out of the loop, and this once again, I think I talked about it last week, Ahsoka is kind of our proxy in the series. She's kind of who we, if we were a character, we would be her, because, see, we know what she knows, and so she doesn't know where they're going, and we don't know where they're going. It's just, she's kind of our proxy, and it's always kind of felt that way, as I mentioned before, where, she was a Padawan learner at the beginning of the Clone Wars cartoon, and we kind of grew up with her, and so we've been following her this entire time, that she kind of becomes our placeholder. Trace, though, does seem excited about where they're going. We also learn, and like I mentioned earlier, Trace doesn't know much about how flying in this area works, but we also learn that she isn't exactly a good pilot. She isn't exactly a trained pilot. She admits it's like, well, I've never flown starships. I've always just had speeders and things like that. So, she leaves like, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was basically the parking brake. They were in hyperspace, and the thing is just shaking and rattling, and she's like, oh, I left this on. That could have been bad. Kessel ends up being their destination, and of course Ahsoka, knowing a lot more than she's letting on, seems really worried, and she points out that Kessel is known for its corruption, and she can also tell that Rafa is clearly lying about why they're there. Rafa says that they're there to pick up medicine to deliver, and of course you can tell just by the look in Ahsoka's eyes that she thinks Rafa's full of crap. And of course, to no surprise to any fan of Star Wars, the cargo ends up being unrefined spice. And of course, this leads to Ahsoka not trusting this royal family that they're going to be working for. We don't meet the king, and I have a feeling that we're eventually going to meet the king. I don't know who it's going to be, but we're going to meet this king because the person that's there for the king doing the business, he's like, maybe you'll get to meet the king sometime. So I think that's going to happen eventually. I don't know who it's going to be, though. Unless, of course, I've got a hunch that Darth Maul has taken over another kingdom, as he took over the Mandalorians, and, he's done all sorts of, he's wanting to run businesses. It could, I don't know if it's going to play into anything that was in Solo or anything, but it very well could. We'll see. Ahsoka does try to warn the sisters of the dangers of running spice, but the sisters aren't having any of it. And as they go to pick up the spice, they mention that this is the Kessel I've heard about. They see the true nature of Kessel. And Trace, from far up, sees a bunch of people working. She goes, oh, look at all them droids. They must have been able to have lots of money if they can buy all those droids. And Ahsoka mentions those aren't droids, those are people. And Rafa says something along the lines of just them being, workers. She's like, slaves. Slaves is the word you're looking for. And Rafa makes a comment. She's like, well, the Republic wouldn't allow this to happen. Why wouldn't they put a stop to this? And Ahsoka was just like, yeah, I don't know, because they really should. Rafa, of course, still doesn't trust Ahsoka. And she talks to Trace and says, look, and Trace is like, you don't like any of my friends. And Rafa says, you can't trust anyone that's not family. Don't trust anyone that's not family. Ahsoka does learn on the trip there that they're taking the spice to a well-known crime boss. And again, I don't think she's too surprised. Rafa seems awful surprised that Ahsoka yet again knows about something, and she seems to know a lot about the world. Where have you learned all this stuff? And she's like, I pay attention. Rafa and Ahsoka fight about where they should deliver the spice, and Rafa wants to go with the original plan, deliver it to the gangsters, while Ahsoka thinks they should take spice someplace where it can be turned into medicine and help people. Trace is just worried that someone's going to take her ship. I believe it was Rafa said, or no, maybe it was Ahsoka said, they're going to take the spice, they're going to take our lives, they're going to take your ship. And she's like, no one's taking my ship. So this leads to the oh crap moment of the episode. In sheer anger, and because she's tired of Ahsoka and Rafa arguing, Trace just decides to dump the spice in the middle of the light speed space around them. That leads to both Rafa and Ahsoka agreeing that Trace made a terrible and rash decision. After a three-way argument, Ahsoka says she'll try to figure something out. Trace says, well, I thought delivering it to gangsters was bad. How delivering, if the gangsters are going to come after us, we deliver it to somewhere for medicine. How's that going to help? And Ahsoka's like, that's just the moral ground. She goes, I didn't really have a plan. Just, we need to, that's like the moral high ground. And so Ahsoka finally comes up with a plan of what they're going to do, because they don't have spice to deliver, but they're on their way to deliver it. She has a plan, but Rafa and Trace both say, yeah, it's a pretty dumb plan. And that being said, they're all in agreement that, well, nobody else has a plan, so that's the best they've got. Ahsoka does say that she has a few tricks up her sleeve, and of course, as you're watching the episode, one could already imagine that those tricks up her sleeve would be of the Jedi mind variety. And so when they get there, unsurprisingly, the gangsters don't trust them. They're starting to hand him the credits, and he's like, no, I want to see the shipment first. And like, you don't trust us? And he's like, I don't trust anybody that ain't us. Of course, as you thought about when Ahsoka said she had some tricks up her sleeve, she does use the Jedi mind trick on the gang boss. And he's like, you know what? Here's your credits. Be on your way. That being said, before they could leave, another of the gangsters is like, that's highly irregular. I want to check the shipment, make sure everything's on the up and up. And so he's like, I need the code to open the door to the container. And it's like, I thought we sent that to you already. And the trio are trying to make a hastily escape. And the containers are open. They see there's no spice in there. So they instantly call the patrol ships and a tractor beam. And while our heroes are trying to escape, they get caught in a tractor beam. And that's how the episode ends. They're in on another cliffhanger. All in all, this is a pretty strong episode. I don't think there was anything really unexpected. But you got to see, again, we get to see Ahsoka trying to find her place in this world, but she's also seeing that that the Republic aren't doing everything they can to stop things like slavery. She also sees, or tries to warn these two sisters, especially Trace, who really doesn't know anything about the universe, that doing this job is a bad idea. And of course, we knowing what Kessel is, being with the Han Solo legends and everything, we knew it's a bad idea too. So, all in all, pretty strong episode. Again, not a lot of new ground is covered here. Of course, we, got to see Anakin sense Ahsoka on the ship. So at least they're trying to keep them together somehow. I really do hope they find some way to get them together. I don't know if they will. So I don't know how they're going to work on that, because they've already had the "you left" moment where she left the Jedi Order. I don't know if they'll get them back together again. I have a feeling they'll get back together for a little bit, at least further on in the season. But all in all, I still really enjoyed the episode. I like this trio, Rafa, Trace, and Ahsoka. They're just for a shining millisecond. Rafa liked Ahsoka whenever the plan was working, the Jedi mind trick worked, even though Ahsoka kind of just whispered it, so you couldn't really tell what she was doing, or they couldn't tell what she was doing. But I have a feeling in the next episode they're going to learn a lot more about what tricks she has up her sleeve, because they're going to need those tricks and maybe some lightsabers to get out of the situation that they're in. All in all, a pretty strong episode, though, and I did enjoy it. That's going to be all for this edition of Crossin Streams. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Gino YouTube channel. Like this video. If you have anything to say about Season 7, Episode 6 of the Clone Wars, Deal, No Deal, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Till next time, I am your host, the Real Gino, Gino Reynolds. May the Force be with you.